All right, so I get this question a lot, actually. So people come up to me all the time, like, "Hey, how do I find cash buyers in my market? And what are things that I can do to find cash buyers, people who've purchased properties, in distress, and that I can reach out to." And one of the best tools, obviously, is going to be the MLS. So obviously, we have other tools as well that we utilize, like Propelio and PropStream and tools like that that help us find flippers and cash buyers and whatnot. But the best data you can find in your local market will be the actual MLS system. So if you are a real estate agent or you have access to the MLS, I strongly recommend that you use that data because it will be number one. I'll do a similar video to this as well, going over how to find these in PropStream and other tools as well. But again, I always default to the MLS when I can. So let's go ahead and jump on into my MLS, and I'm going to show you what I do to find these cash buyers. And I promise you, it is a lot easier than you think. So let's just go and pop down in. Okay, so really quick, first thing you're gonna notice is I have my MLS open. Now, this is the DFW, or the North Texas MLS. So if you have another MLS like the San Antonio MLS, Sabre, or Austin MLS, or Houston, or Waco, or all those other ones out there in Texas, this may differ, or other parts of the country, depending on where you are. Now, this is based off of the Matrix system, which, from my understanding, is one of the most common out there. I know there's several other different MLS platforms across the nation, but you should have a very similar process in your MLS as to what you're seeing on this MLS. So let me just show you this really, really quick of how I do it. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to go up to search, residential, and then detailed. Again, if you're using another MLS system, I'm sorry, I don't know how to find it in yours, but however you do a search in your MLS. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a look here at all of the sold transactions, all the closed transactions for a period of time. Now, right now I have this set to 182 days. I may back that up to 360, not that many, 365 days, just so I see the full year, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here to the additional fields. All right, so once you're in this screen here, you're going to add the available field for buyer financing. So you can search for it or scroll through the list, totally up to you. But I'm going to look for buyer financing. And then I'm going to go and add that on over into the selected field. So now I can go in and utilize that. So now, once that's in there, I'm just going to go back. And it's going to take me back into the search filters screen here. And then I'm going to scroll on down to my additional fields. And now you'll see I have this new field here called buyer financing. So what I can do here is I can select all of the financing that was used or marked as used by the buyer. So when the property gets sold, the listing agent is required to go into that listing and update the price that it was sold for and what type of financing it was used. So if it was cash, then they would go in and select cash. And that's a great indicator. Now, given, this is all based on how the agent notates the sale in the system. And this can get really skewed, right? Because what if the buyer didn't necessarily use cash, right? What if they use a hard money loan, or it was noted as a loan? So when they saw the closing docs, they saw that it was financing in some degree. So instead of them putting in cash, they went and they actually listed it as a finance deal. There's so many variables there to work with. But if you go based off cash sales, you're pretty close. You're pretty close. That's all it comes down to. It comes down to being close. So I'm just going to go here. I'm just going to choose cash. That's the biggest one right there. So now what I'll do is I have that cash selection. So now I want to narrow down into a certain area, right? Because if I just do the whole thing, well, you're going to see I have 5,000 plus matches, and that means it's only going to show me that amount, 5,000, right? It's not going to show me everything. I could go in here and go to results, and I'll see all 5,000 transactions that were done. for that year, or 5,000 plus transactions that were done. And I will not be able to export all of these transactions. The MLS doesn't allow me to do that. And I don't want to do that. I only want to focus in on the transactions that occurred close to the subject property that I might be looking to sell, or a certain zip code that I might be looking to sell into. I generally look at zip code. I don't try to narrow down too much. I try to look at the zip code as much as possible. So let's just go in here into the map. And the map's going to allow me to really drill on in. So let's say I wanted to find all the cash transactions that occurred in 76109. Let's say I had a property in that zip code. Well, I can look at that zip code, and then now you're going to see, okay, here is that zip code right here, and I can see how many cash transactions happened, and it's going to pop up in that list. So if I want to narrow that down, there's a couple ways I can narrow that down just to see those transactions. I could either go in and draw a box around that area, or I can use the radius tool to go within a certain mile radius or whatever around that property to select those, I almost said leads. They're not leads, but to select those transactions and then go to the results tab. And in here, you'll see that drilled it down to about 97 results. Now, these are just the sold listings that happened in that area during that time, and they sold for cash. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that those were cash buyers. They're cash buyers that bought with cash, but it doesn't mean that they are going to be investors, right? What if it was someone who cashed out on one of their properties and then they bought their next homestead using the cash that they had from their sale? Or they're just someone who's well off and they just bought their house for cash. So a lot of different variables will go into there. So what I try to do next is I will go into those listings and I'll see which ones were junkers, right? So I'll come in here and I'll just take a look at the photos. And from the photos, I could pretty much tell that, this house right here was most likely bought by an investor, right? That's a pretty good indication. But if I go further on down the list, I'll probably find a house like this that is actually in really nice shape, but is bought for cash. So that means that someone bought this house for themselves, for the most part, right? Now, what you could do from here is you can go into the tax records, and the tax records will then tell you more information about this particular sale, right? It will tell you who bought it. Was it an entity? Was it a person, right? And right here, we can see Gumbert Real Estate 5 LLC. That's an investor. So now you can go in and skip trace that LLC, find the managing members of the LLC, find their phone numbers, give them a call, ask them if they're looking to buy more properties. Or what I like to do as well, this is a two-step. I will obviously skip trace to find the managing members, but I will also go in here, and I will go into the listing, and I will scroll all the way down to the very bottom, and I will call the buyer's agent, because the buyer's agent will tap me into that buyer and maybe other investor buyers that they're working with. But a lot of the times, that buyer's agent is actually the buyer themselves, because they're trying to find their own listing. So they may have their own, because they're trying to find their own deals. So they may have a real estate license and they buy under their real estate license. So I would say half of the time, the buyer's agent is the actual buyer themselves. The other half of the time, it's actually the agent working with the buyer so they could tap me in to that buyer and I can build a relationship with that agent. So that's what I like to do, is I reach out to the agent first. And if that agent is the buyer, well, that's done. I can add them to my buyer's list or pitch them the property that I have, right? Or talk to them about seeing if they could present this property to that buyer. So that's how I look in the MLS to find cash transactions or cash buyers. Hopefully you found this helpful. If you did, I would love it if you just tell me that down below, or if there's anything else that you would love for me to talk about. I would love to see your comments to tell me about how I can improve these videos, what you find value out of, or if you just want to tell me that my bald head is shining a glare into the camera lens. I'm trying to fix that in post. I'm sorry. It's just, it is what it is. But hey, until next time, I appreciate you guys coming along here, and I would appreciate if you would just like this video down below if you found value in this content, and I'll talk with you guys on the next video.